Okay, so we have a new episode of Legends and Leaders, and today it's great to have Derek here. Derek, you're behind a really fast-growing company today, on the Inc. 5000 list, which is definitely impressive. But it's a company that serves a really great purpose. I mean, you're bringing smart switches, dimmers, and a bunch of other products in this lighting space or lighting associated space to the mass market, to a lot of people that need them. That need something great quality, pretty affordable, and just overall much better and more sophisticatedly built. And now you've got, I think, 10,000 new homes a month that are being deployed with your technology, which is, super impressive to get to that point. And I know you're scaling pretty quickly too. So I'm excited to have you here and to get into your story.
Yeah, thanks, Ben, for having me.
Awesome. So, just going back to the beginning, like how did your interest in electronics, electrical engineering, lighting, like how did that become a passion of yours?
I grew up in Canada and ended up doing an electrical engineering degree coming out of high school. I was always kind of one of those people that would like fiddle with electronics and try to build things and, rebuild a vacuum cleaner and that kind of stuff. It's like that kind of classic story of a geek type of person. So I did my electrical engineering degree, and then I got really lucky. I interviewed at this tiny little startup company in Canada called Research in Motion. That just happened to, a few months after I joined, launched the BlackBerry, which was basically the world's first smartphone. And so I total random luck ended up at that company, and it blew up. And I just kind of opened my eyes to the world of consumer electronics, building technology products to make life easier, more convenient for the mass market.
So just totally by luck, you wound up at that company, this major disruptive company.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up about an hour and a half away, and I have an older brother who went to the University of Waterloo, and there was lots of discussion about this amazing company that was starting up there, and he's like, "You got to check out this company." And so I applied, and one afternoon I interviewed, and they're like, right on the spot, gave me a job offer, and I'm like, "Okay, I guess I'm going to take this job."
So what was it like being at, the precursor to BlackBerry, which, became BlackBerry? Like what did you kind of learn about corporate culture or building tech products that, now you've kind of started to apply to what you're building?
I mean, I think our focus, and I was young, right? I was like 21, 22 years old, right out of engineering school. But our maniacal focus on the customer and the problems that the customer could see, and then just being that first in that space of opening it up to, millions and millions of people, you started learning about the next problem and the next problem, the next problem that was happening. And, social media and all sorts of stuff was taking off around that time. And so you just realizing that you get this one kind of insight that can open things up, and it can develop a lot of different types of new opportunities. I was lucky to have, there's great leadership at that company. There's TV shows and movies about the origins of the company now. And I know a lot of the people, but it was a great starting point for me in my career for sure.
So if it was such a good time, what made you kind of want to leave and do Cypress Semiconductor and be working over there?
Well, I was living in Canada, and then, it's kind of a, small pond, I guess you could say, in terms of like the technology market. I took an opportunity to move to England with BlackBerry, lived there for a couple of years, and lived in this amazing city in London. And then it was kind of like moving back. I felt like it was kind of moving backwards in life to move back to this small town outside of Toronto, Ontario. And so I knew that I wanted to be at kind of the mecca of technology in the world. And so I basically just, booked a plane ticket and moved to Silicon Valley, and then started looking for jobs.
And how did you land on Cypress?
Um, my brother had actually worked there and had been there for a bunch of years. So I knew about the company and the technology. And so that helped me get an interview and kind of get in there. And, it worked out really well. I was there for almost 13 years, and what was cool about that company is they're a broadline semiconductor manufacturer, meaning they make computer chips that can go in, from cars to cell phones to laptop computers to air brake system, like airbags and, like military equipment, just like anything that's got electronics in it. And so I was in a role that I got exposed to thousands of different companies that were building and bringing, products to market. And it was just a great foundation for really understanding technology, business strategies, different business models. And that was, and it was such a great company that I got all these different opportunities and in different roles, from engineering to sales to product to business leadership roles.
So you were there for 13, around 13 years. Were you thinking about being entrepreneurial at that time? Like, how did that passion start to evolve, that interest?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been kind of entrepreneurial. I think in high school, my first business was, you know, ripping off CDs and selling them at music concerts that I would go to in the summers, kind of a thing, and selling t-shirts and illegal merch and that type of stuff when I was, 15, 16 years old. And even while I was at Cypress, I helped incubate a business or two while I was there. I started a group that was large form factor touchscreens, multi-touch, capacitive touch devices, and helped define an entire roadmap of products that turned into basically touchscreen subsystems, which became, close to $1 billion business for us.
So, what led to the specific interest of, hey, I can go and do something interesting in lighting on my own? Like, how did you start to develop that plan, and then what made you get to the point where, like, hey, I'm going to actually leave and go do this?
I mean, I totally stumbled on it. I'm one of those people, an entrepreneur, that I see problems all the time. That's a problem. That's not how things should be. That's not how it should work, right? And you do see that every day in your day-to-day life. But you got to put the lens on, can you build a business around this, right? Is there a way where the value that you're going to create, you can monetize that and you can kind of protect that value when it's in its infancy and you're growing a business from scratch? And it just so happened that in my years at Cypress, I relocated up to Seattle, moved from the Bay Area up to Seattle. My wife and I bought a home. And then when we bought that home, all the walls were beige, and she's like, yeah, paint all the walls white. Well, then we had beige light switches on white walls. And then I spent maybe the next 6 weekends rewiring switches, taking these beige light switches out just to replace them with white switches, right? And that's where I got this pain point that, I was spending half an hour to 45 minutes, shocked myself a couple of times, and, I need all these different tools to figure it out. And then, I once actually started a small little fire because I didn't put stuff together right, and there was smoke coming out of it. And I'm like, wait a second, this is really complicated and dangerous. And yet, if you just want to change the color of a switch or put in a dimmer switch, or maybe you're into technology and you want to put in smart switches and smart lighting, you're going to go and do this yourself, or you're going to pay an electrician, 30, 40, 50, maybe as much as $100 to go do that for you. It doesn't seem like the right way things should work. And so I kind of got that insight that if I could make a switch, I'll show you here our switch, that basically without turning off the power, I could literally unplug the switch from the wall. I can't shock myself in any way, and then replace it with, call it a dimmer switch, in 2 seconds, kind of like replacing a light bulb in a few seconds. Well, the value that we're providing is replacing, 10 to 30 minutes of human labor and preventing, somebody getting electrocuted or starting a fire or something like that. There's real value there. Maybe it's $30, $40 of value. Could I replace that with putting in a connector that is a $1, $2 connector in place of it? And what a great arbitrage. Like, can you replace $40 of human labor for $2 of plastic? Pretty good arbitrage, right? Then the question was, can you build a sustainable, profitable, defensible business out of it?
So it started from, the issue of customization and accessibility to just make a change. And you were thinking, like, let's just design a system that's much better, and then we can expand that to all different types of switches and dimmers and however we want to do it. But it was like this core system was what you really wanted to do.
Yeah, it's change happens, right? Sometimes you're building a new home and the builder doesn't know exactly who's going to buy the home. Like, are they into technology? Are they not? Maybe they're trying to build a very affordable home, so they'll put in like the lowest cost products up front. Like they won't even put in dimmer switches or timers or things like that. And then you buy that home and then you're like, well, I want to personalize this. This is the largest expense that most people will ever make in their life. And they want to make it theirs. Every time I bought a home, I'm painting walls, I'm changing things out, like changing a faucet or, appliances or whatever it is. You want to make it yours. But, when you're dealing with high voltage electricity, it's inaccessible to the average person. So could we do this in a way that we can make smart home technology accessible to anybody?
So, Derek, how did you make the prototype? And then how did you start to actually get it out there, get sales for it, figure out how to market this thing?
Well, the first prototype, so I had the idea and the vision, and I happened to be, into the entrepreneurial stuff. And so I was watching Kickstarter and Indiegogo, and I'm not a mechanical engineer, I'm an electrical engineer. But I saw this little Kickstarter that I could buy and build my own 3D printer kit. This is back in 2013. And so I bought a 3D printer kit, and it took me about 20 hours to assemble it because it was all like laser cut wood, and I need, 1,000 screws that I had to put together and basically program it and build it myself. I did that with the idea of I want to 3D print prototypes of the types of products that I want to build so that I could communicate my ideas in the physical world to other people. And so that was my first prototype was, I 3D printed about 15 different versions and I just started showing it to a bunch of different people.
And how did you start to actually get sales from it? Like did you launch a campaign? Like what did you kind of do to get the initial traction?
The initial thought was, do a Kickstarter or something like that to raise some capital and show some customer traction. But as we started to get going, that market started to soften a little bit. And I was, just talking to, entrepreneurs can be quite annoying if they're your friends or your neighbors when they're getting an idea off the ground, because all they want to do is talk about it. All they want to do is show it. And so that's what I did. I talked to every single person, every random person. And I ended up talking to a neighbor of mine, and I showed him this concept of a product very similar to what we have today. And he's like, well, I'm a builder. Like, that'd be perfect for me. Like, I have these clients, they work at Microsoft or Amazon or whatever, and they always want smart home technology, but it's too complicated for my electrician. It's too complicated. These smart home specialists, they're flaky. I'm not trying to disparage them, but just that guy's experience with it was. And so he's like, this is something that's so easy that my homeowners could do this. Like, I could put in this base system and then they could plug in and set up their smart system. And then I don't have to support it because I'm not technical at all, but they want it. So this is a great, great way to go do this. And so he hooked me up with a couple of electricians, and then they hooked me up with some builders, and it just kind of snowballed from there. And I ended up talking to a local builder here that said, hey, if you can build this and bring this to market, I'll put this in every home that I build, and gave me basically a $500,000 purchase order to go and show that they really, really wanted it. And I'm like, okay, well, I think if I can, in a couple of months, talk to people and get this type of orders, there's a real market here. I should go do something with this.
So, so how different is the mechanism now to swap things out and change it than what you originally envisioned? Like, is it pretty much the same?
No, the original vision that I had, I wouldn't say I'm a great engineer. Definitely on the mechanical side. We ended up hiring and brought in some consultants to do it because the design for this connector, we knew that this needed to last for hundreds of years, right? Like, this is analogous to a 3-prong outlet in the home. And, the first outlet was just a 2-prong outlet, delivering power in a neutral. And eventually we added a ground to it, 100 years ago. But that outlet connector has basically stayed the same for, over 100 years now. And so I knew when we were designing this, it couldn't be some third-rate engineer like myself to go and do this. We needed to get some really, really talented people to design it, and they did, to make it such that there's a lot of physical space here, because we knew we wanted to put more than lighting into it, like cameras, microphones, AI technology as it comes, like that this is going to be a platform for decades, if not centuries. And so we had to make it very space efficient, user intuitive, safe. There's a whole bunch of criteria that was there. And so it ended up being conceptually the same idea, but totally different implementation.
So, what would you say has enabled you to really ramp up to, having this now in 10,000 new homes, pretty much a month, having your various products like at that point? Like, what were some of the breakthrough aspects to get to from this initial purchase order that you mentioned before to get to the scale of today?
Yeah. And anyone that's building a business that is traditionally a B2B business, we're kind of a B2B2C, where we're selling to home builders, we're selling to electricians, remodeling companies, things like that. But ultimately, the end is a consumer, the person that buys that home or moves into that home. And when you're in the B2B world, you don't just immediately start working with the largest home builder in America, which is D.R. Horton, right? You have to work your way up and prove to a small mid-sized builder, somebody that builds 50 homes a year, that you can build product, deliver the product, service the customers, that everything works well. You get lots of those guys, and then all of a sudden you'll get somebody that's building maybe 500 homes a year to go, oh, these guys are starting to compete against me. They're using this product and this technology. That's really interesting. Customers like it. Now let me try that. And so we kind of migrated from people that build like 50 homes a year to 500 homes a year to a couple thousand homes a year. And then ultimately 4 years ago, we landed a deal with D.R. Horton, the largest home builder in America, when they saw us get a lot of traction going, and they saw the vision of what was possible. And that's what really propelled us kind of into the stratosphere of growth.
How have you like protected, Derek, the design and the unique aspects of how you've designed this? Because I'm sure like others can just come around and try to create a similar thing, but it is your concept. How did you ensure that you prevented like any knockoffs and stuff like that so you could get to this type of scale?
Yeah, great question. And that's the critical thing when you're deciding to start a business or not, is you can identify a problem, and then you can come up with a solution to that problem. But can you do it in such a way that you can protect the profits that are generated from that, and they don't all get wrung out by just other people just knocking off your idea and copying that idea, right? So when I first came up with the idea, the very first thing I did is I searched for patents, right? Has anybody thought of doing anything like this before? And no one had patented this concept before. And so filed a bunch of patents originally, which was kind of key, right? And over 250 different ideas around this modular lighting system and how to make other things modular. Filed a whole bunch of patents around that stuff as well. So patents, I think, are a pretty key part of our strategy. But there's a huge first mover advantage as well, in that when you get a builder or you get a community, a market that is built around this standard, you don't really want to have a VHS Betamax competition happening here. So in the more, we call this the Deako backplate, this connector, the more backplates that you have out there, the more that the suppliers in the ecosystem are carrying that product on their trucks, it's in distribution, the more other third-party companies want to build for that as a platform. And now we've got 10 different devices that plug into this connector. We're working on another 4 or 5 more. We also partnered with some of the major players, like the largest electricians in the United States, the largest distributors in the United States, the largest builders in the United States. And we brought them in as strategic investors in the company too. So they've got a vested interest in this becoming a industry standard or a de facto standard.
So you kind of made it more like a platform that people could build off of than just like a one kind of product itself.
Absolutely. And that was the core concept, right? Is that, think of it like the USB connector, right? That is a platform for thousands of companies to build off of, that they know, okay, as long as I conform to this connector standard, I can plug into it and I can get power, I can get data, right? The users know how to use it and can click into that. The original vision that we had was, well, there's a light switch in every room in the home, right? And it's got constant power to it. So it's conveniently located where you can put things like cameras, microphones, speakers, temperature sensors, carbon monoxide detectors, COVID detector, like all sorts of different types of things. And really what we are is a platform company. We've had to seed it with the first obvious devices, an on-off switch, a dimmer switch, a smart switch. But the types of things that can go into this platform that will eventually be across millions and millions of homes is we easily allow people to develop and deploy technology directly to the consumer without having to mess with high voltage wire.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. Also, the applications like that you have developing as a platform, like you can expand, I think, much quicker to lots of different categories in this space, which is great. I mean, now I think you're at 30 million products in over 9 years out there, that's incredible. So, what did it feel like, Derek, to hit number 182 on the Inc. 5000 list of the fastest growing companies in America? I mean, that's a pretty huge accomplishment to get to that point. What did it feel like?
I mean, we're so focused in the day-to-day, building cool products and great experiences for our customers. We don't really think about it too much. Our marketing team did a great job of like, hey, we're growing really fast here. This is going to be a big company here. There's a lot of potential here. We might want to, market that a little bit, right? Because honestly, we haven't spent really any money marketing our company. We've been around for almost 10 years now, and we work with builders. They're pushing their brand. And we just thought, like, let's just build really high quality products that are easy to use, super simple, and the marketing will take care of itself. And now we're getting a lot more interest, a lot more traction, as we've kind of blown up. And we start to expand into other market segments, right? We're starting an initiative right now where it's not just new homes and new construction, but you can actually retrofit this into your existing homes. And we help you go and do that across our nationwide electrician partners.
So, what do you want to accomplish now? Like, what are some of your short-term goals, your long-term goals, Derek? Like, what's kind of your big picture vision at this point?
I think a big part of it is there's kind of two segments of the market that are taking advantage of some of these whole home smart features and smart capabilities like smart lighting. There are people that are really wealthy. You're building a $3 million, $5 million custom home, and you can bring in a team to design the tech for your home and program it and set it up and maintain it for you. And then there are, frankly, people that are like me, that are kind of techie geek types of people that are pretty hands-on, and you can rewire stuff and build out a system for your home. But it's not broadly accessible to the average person. Like, it's not so drop dead easy that anybody can go and do it, right? And so our entire mission is what we call effortless change. How do I make it effortless for somebody to go from their home maybe has a regular on-off switch, right? And effortlessly, in a second, change it to deploy exactly what they want. And maybe that's smart home technology. Maybe it's just a dimmer switch that they want in their home. But how do they do that effortlessly, intuitively, right? It's a free app that you can download. Very user obvious to go and do things like, when I go to bed at night, I can press and hold one switch for 2 seconds and all the lights in my home go off. I don't have to go room to room, turning off lights after my kids every night, How do I set up these experiences that if you can set up an alarm on your phone, you can do this in your own home? How do we make those types of experiences? Because a lot of the smart home tech that's been out has not made it broadly easy to install, program, set up, use. There's just friction along the way. And we've got a ton of learning from over our years of going and doing that. So we want to apply that not just to lighting, but a bunch of other things as well.
Well, that was all the questions that I had, Derek. I'm definitely excited to see where you're going to go next with this. I think it's a great and great invention you guys have brought to the market that makes it much simpler to really customize the appearance of your home, and actually take advantage of a lot of, I think, design that people have wanted to really put into their homes but haven't been able to yet, just because of the level of difficulty. And I'm excited to see how you continue to scale this and bring it to millions more. And looking forward to what's next. Wish you much success, Derek. Thanks for coming on.
Great, Ben. Thanks for having me.